Okay, I would like to officially call to order the Tuesday, June 4th, 2019 meeting of the Bolton Conservation Commission. And as always, we'll start with a roll call. I am Brian Barabee.
I'm Jeff Bryan.
Kip McNamara, Bill Payne.
Rebecca Longo.
All right, starting out this evening, I'm going to do all four, I think. The Bolton Conservation Commission will now continue a public hearing under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and under the Bolton Button Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider a notice of intent submitted by Scott Goddard regarding the proposed driveway improvement located at 21 Century Mill Road. Public meeting to be held this evening. The Bolton Conservation Commission will also continue a public hearing under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and under the Bolton Button Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider a notice of intent submitted by Sam Labry of Goddard Consulting regarding the proposed construction of a single-family home and septic system on Lot 3 Century Mill Road. Public meeting to continue this evening. The Bolton Conservation Commission will also continue a public hearing under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and under the Bolton Button Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider notice of intent submitted by Sam Labry of Goddard Consulting regarding the proposed construction of a single-family home and septic system on Lot 4 Century Mill Road. Public meeting to begin this evening. The Bolton Conservation Commission finally will continue a public hearing under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and under the Bolton Button Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider the request for determination of applicability submitted by Sam Labry of Goddard Consulting regarding the proposed grading associated with the construction of a single-family home and septic system located at Lot 2 Century Mill Road. Rebecca, do we have an update?
Yes, the applicant has requested a continuation as we are having the potential vernal pool evaluated tomorrow by the third-party consultant and some of the members of the commission present. And he has asked that it be continued until the next meeting, which I believe is June 18th. If everyone's okay with that still.
Yes. Okay, in that case, I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for 21 Century Mill Road until our next public meeting, Tuesday. Oh, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, Martha Remington, excuse me, Main Street. I haven't been to these continuations for a long time. Is this project, what happened after the vernal pool examination?
So that's being done tomorrow.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
So it's still the original 3 extra lots, or were there 4 new lots?
No, there are 3 new lots being created.
Okay,
The
plus the
fourth-
original house.
Well, plus the original driveway, yes.
It's just kind of like deja vu all over again, all over again,
Yes.
all over again. So, the 18th you'll be discussing these. Thank you so much.
So, I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for 21 Century Mill Road until our next public hearing, June 18, 2019 at 7 o'clock p.m.
Second.
All those in favor? Aye. I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for Lot 3 Century Mill Road until our next public meeting, June 18, 2019 at 7:05 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for Lot 4 Century Mill Road until our next public meeting, June 18, 2019 at 7:10 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
And I'd like to make a motion that we continue the public hearing for Lot 2 Century Mill Road until our next public meeting, June 18, 2019 at 7:15 p.m.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye. So moved.
So we'll continue. All right, our next official hearing is at 7:30, so I think we have a discussion regarding Keys Farm tonight. It looks like many people are here to comment on that. I'm so sorry, 147 Long Hill Road. So we'll probably just take that up first. When you are ready, do you want to give an update?
Sure. So we had mailed out after our last meeting, actually, if you two gentlemen want to come up, that'd be great. So we have the applicant and their representative present as well. If you just wanna state your name for the record.
Walter Erickson. Good to see you.
We had sent out a letter after the last meeting requesting a third-party review of the work that's under the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission. Walter called me and emailed me and updated us along with the individual that they've chosen out of the three options that we gave them. Amy Ball was hired from Horsley and Witten, or is being hired to my understanding. She contacted my office as well to just confirm, receive any documentation that would supplement what she needs to be reviewing. In addition to that, Walter had sent an email, or I had notified him that the the deadline's now passed as June 1st. The order of conditions was only extended until June 1st. So currently, it's an expired order of conditions. In addition to that, we have some litigation coming up regarding fees that they had appealed the fees related to the violation from some time ago now, back in September, if I'm not mistaken. So Walter's response was, we would like to meet to talk about the fees and fines as they feel they are nearing the end of their project, along with now that they are working, I've requested the information to basically provide evidence that they have hired Amy Ball and contracted that work. So if you want to.
So, regards to the wetlands replication area, that's what the third-party consultant is. So we did contact Amy Ball from Horton Lightning, and she sent in the paperwork to Rebecca first, I believe, so that we can finalize it. And she's agreed to meet with us in the next week or two and inspect the area, make sure the plans are coming up the way they should, and give the commission and myself her opinion of that wetlands replication area. We have a $35,000 bond posted to the Conservation Commission for that wetlands replication area. And under your bylaws, it has to be monitored for 2 years anyway. So it's going to be an ongoing thing. It's not going to be resolved this year. But if she has some suggestions for us and has some plans that she thinks we should put there, some additional vegetation, we'll, look at her recommendation, meet with you, and we'll come up with a plan of action. On the side slope for Lot 5, the original, what we were originally cited for, if the commission remembers, we went out to do a site visit to look at the wetlands replication area, and we came across the side slope here on Lot 5 for the septic area. We stabilized it, and it is still stabilized appropriately. It's been, I think, very effective. I was out there just 3 or 4 weeks ago. Ducharme and Dillis has gone out there and done an as-built plan for it, and they said that they would have that ready to submit to the board for the next Conservation Commission meeting, so that we can incorporate that into the plan instead of the original plan that showed that boulder rock retaining wall. So they went out there and they did the field work, and they said they'd have that plan ready for next meeting.
Okay. So I guess, and thank you for providing that update. I guess the two questions, just administratively, that we're working with is the expired order of conditions. And I guess the other question is, why wasn't an as-built provided for this meeting, I guess?
Ducharme and Dillis just finished the as-built on April for the roadway for the planning board.
Okay.
And we went to the planning board, met with the planning board engineer to try to see what modifications we had to make. And then when they went out there to stake out the modifications that they wanted us to make, they did the as-built at the same time.
Okay. My follow-up question is, are you currently doing any work out there right now?
No, but we have told the planning board that we would have all of their work finished. They want us to re-loom and reseed the side of the road,
Okay.
clean up a couple of areas, put some fill material behind a side slope, and we told them we would have everything done by June 15th.
Okay. Is any of that work within the jurisdictional area?
Yes.
Okay. So, again, I sort of fall back to the expired order of conditions, and I know as far as the monitoring goes and the third-party review and the success of that vegetation, I see what you're saying in terms of that's ongoing for 2 years once it's finalized. So fine, once it's expired, or once if you come forward because you wanna request your certificate of compliance at that time because you feel it's to the extent compliant with the order of conditions, those would be ongoing. So once I receive some sort of documentation establishing that you have, or Amy's provided a quote to you, you've decided, okay, yes, we're going to go with that, here's the contract with Amy, we're gonna work on that, or depositing what her quote is to the town so that we can put that in an account to pull from, to pay for that review, then I could see, okay, that's in the monitoring period. We can sort of put that in a checkbox and let it stay there until things are successfully grown or successfully within compliance regarding the replication area. My concern is that now you're sort of in catch-22 again because planning board now wants you to continue work, and I don't know what the commission's going to say or decide, but they've extended your deadline until June 15th, which is all well and fine, they have their own jurisdiction, but now you'd be partially working within the jurisdiction of the Conservation Commission under no or an expired order of conditions.
What's the scope of work, do you think, in the jurisdiction areas there?
Well, when they modeled the capacity of the detention basins, we were a little short, so we have to change the side slopes a little bit. So we'll be working in the detention basin area.
Okay.
Can I ask a quick question? This report that's coming from Chairman Dillis, is that gonna be for the next meeting?
Yes,
Okay, so that would be June 18th.
Correct.
and we should have all the planning board work done by then as well. So I guess it would be appropriate for us to ask for an extension of the order of conditions till June 30th.
So, well, here's my issue. We've been extending deadlines, extending order of conditions, saying things have been done, they haven't gotten done. Now you're really under the gun here and you want another extension. Fine. But that all aside, your order of conditions has expired. So I would need to make a call to DEP to see if even
Well, the
we
order
could
of
do
conditions
that.
had expired before we extended it this last time.
the first time.
Yeah, that was
So
the
at this
first time.
point, I think it's really an administrative extension for an additional 2-week period. You know, the board had discretion in connection with the original request for the extension to go out further. And I understand it decided not to, and we certainly appreciate the reasons
Because of
behind that.
the
We
deadlines.
certainly appreciate the reasons behind it. But at this point, you know, I think everybody's working toward the same end, and in order to achieve that, you know, we're gonna need that time.
And it's only work in the buffer zone, confined. You know, it is in your aura area, but it's not in the wetlands area.
Okay. And again, just to note, locally, those are still resource areas. So I do appreciate you clarifying that, though. I guess the question is to the commission and, well, so two-part. The question to the commission would be, you know, would they be willing to extend? We can't even extend it tonight, it would have to be extended at the June 18th meeting because we have new documentation, you're not a formal public hearing this evening. So that's question one, is to basically give them until the end of June, even though we've been giving them month after month after month here in terms of deadlines.
Well, I don't mean to interrupt you, but this work for the planning board's directive is to be done in the next 2 weeks. So, you know, unfortunately,
Go ahead.
this is a pressing issue, obviously, for us. We can either disappoint this board or the planning board. What I'd like to do is try to satisfy both. And, you know, perhaps we can get some sort of determination of applicability as to this work limited in scope to what the planning board is required of a developer.
It couldn't have been done during the wintertime anyway, this work, so.
So, I appreciate both of your comments. I think where my mind goes, and I think the planning board as well has mentioned it a few times, it's been, and I'm not saying the commission's not going to extend, I'm not suggesting to them not to or to, it's up to them. What I'm stating is, putting the facts out there that it's been extended, the order of conditions,
No.
deadlines were set by the applicant and both boards. I'm not even talking about planning board right now, but I appreciate you can't satisfy one without the other.
The issue is if the developer were to do the work that the planning board is requiring of him, and this commission says, well, we didn't extend the order and you're working without permission,
Mhm.
then this board could take enforcement action. So we're in a position where we either have to tell the planning board, sorry, we're on hold pending review from conservation, or we need some satisfaction from conservation that they're not gonna take enforcement action while we try to satisfy what the planning board expects.
Right.
And I think, under the act, you have, under what they consider either emergency powers or a request for determination, you have the authority to allow work to go on in a buffer zone, as a buffer zone project, if you don't think it's gonna negatively impact.
Correct. So the issue with that is though, we have nothing before us requesting that, aside from you verbally. That needs to be done during a public hearing. So we would still be out until June 18th to even fulfill your request this evening. So that, again, that's why I'm saying it's catch-22. So even if the commission does say, yes, we're willing to work with you on that, you're still going to be past planning board's deadline before you get to continue the work within jurisdictional area. In addition to that, it's not an emergency, I'll be honest with you. This doesn't classify or qualify as an
I
emergency
agree
permit.
with you.
I understand
I
that, we
agree
were
with
just
you.
giving an example.
Planning
The
board.
only thing you would be able to work under is an enforcement that would allow you to complete the work. So, again, it's a catch-22, but it's, you either wait until the next meeting, or unless the commission says, you know, get the documentation into us and but even then, it has to be done during a public hearing. This is during the public meeting as an informal discussion. So you're still in a rather sticky spot, even if the commission were to say, yes, we would like to be able to work with you in the planning board, our next meeting's not until June 18th.
By documentation, you mean the stuff from Duchamp and Dillis, is that what you mean? when you say
No, so what
documentation?
so that's the other thing is, providing the commission with an update on what's been done would certainly help, your argument, not argument, but your request in terms of, we would like to continue this work, this is clearly what needs to be done, this is what's been done already, we're just looking to finish this up. We haven't been provided with any new information at this time, but I know you said you'll have that. So regarding documentation, I'm talking about filing. So when you initiate a public hearing, notice of intent's filed, RDA is filed.
Yep. And that hasn't
There's a
been done
process.
because it passed the,
Well,
they're in, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. I'm not a legal person, they're you, but I mean, they haven't made the deadlines,
so they haven't made the deadlines. The order of conditions has expired.
Right.
Because the commission extended it until the last possible, actually beyond the deadline that the applicant gave
Right,
themselves
right,
regarding,
right.
excuse me.
So we
last-
don't have any new documentation of what's going on in that stuff, that's the.
No, but the issue is,
catch-22.
we don't have documentation for, extension of the order of conditions, we don't have any documentation for a request for termination for the leftover work. And we don't have, even a request for certificate of compliance to push ongoing conditions.
Okay,
So in terms of initiating a request to that extent, to my understanding, both under the Wetlands Protection Act and our local bylaw, they would have to file, and then we'd be able to address that request.
yeah, okay, that's what I was
So-
trying to get to.
Yeah. I mean, is there a feeling that the commission has in order for them to continue work?
Just my opinion, that, you know, if we say no, then everything stops. If we say yes, we wait for the paperwork should be here by the 18th. If it's not there, then what happens?
Well, the paperwork would have to be here by, let's see,
If we do an IDA,
an RDA, it would need to be here by, today's the 4th, 5th, by Wednesday, or into the paper. It would have to be in this Friday's paper to fulfill open meeting law advertising requirement.
I could email it to you tomorrow morning. I'll bring it down.
I would suggest to bring it down, if that's what you choose to do, that's fine.
Well, just out of curiosity,
Yes.
what if we determined that the scope of the work involved at this point was consistent with the O&M plan, which is an ongoing condition under the order of conditions, and so ongoing conditions aren't something we would have to extend for, aren't something that we would have to get a new determination for, just like the replication area, we have to wait and see how it grows. There are obligations to, you know, to maintain the drainage. I mean, if the commission were to make a determination that the extent of the work is just satisfying the O&M requirements under the order, then do we need an extension?
So, my short answer is yes, you'd either need an extension or request for certificate of compliance.
Why?
Because once you have the certificate of compliance, then those ongoing conditions continue, but without documentation,
So you're saying that until the certificate of compliance is issued, that there are no ongoing O&M requirements?
what I'm stating is that right now, in the in-between period, I would need to double check to see if that would carry through, because what
In
I
a
have,
hypothetical where many situations where a certificate of compliance is a year or more down the road because of growth issues or whatever, certainly the expectation is that the operations and maintenance plan is going to be upheld, right? But the
with
order,
appropriate and accurate and current order of conditions that would continue unless the certificate of compliance is applied for, you would receive a partial, and that would withhold those conditions.
I don't know that everyone would extend an order of conditions out through certificate of compliance in every case. I think that,
That's most cases, actually.
yeah, I don't know.
Well, the operation and maintenance plan, stormwater management plan, it extends past the order of
Right, it's
conditions.
not-
This is
I
all
understand
plans,
that. So, and that's what I'm saying, is once your certificate of compliance is issued, the operation and management plan, I'm talking about conservation commission jurisdiction and how the commissions typically handle things. That's what pushes it to be attached to that property and to be attached to continue on as ongoing conditions, ongoing maintenance items. So, again, I'm not stating that you can't do that. If the commission would like to hear you out on that matter, you know, I would put it to them, but I strongly believe, I don't know how planning board does it, we're the conservation commission, and we either have an order of conditions that's valid, or we have a certificate of compliance, or a partial that would carry over those, or an enforcement order that states continue work doing X, Y, Z until this is lifted.
Well, I guess it's up to the board, which way they would like us to go.
Thoughts, comments?
My other comment is the work needs to get done. I mean, we need to get it done. So I would think that all the paperwork necessary, the administrative paperwork necessary for you to be able to put your stamp of approval on it, Rebecca,
Well, your stamp
Our
of approval is
stamp, our
clear,
stamp.
but yeah.
Has to be, there has to be a good faith thing that is gonna get done, and has that been historically has that happened in the past?
What?
That we said, okay, we'll do this and get the paperwork done afterwards, is that,
No.
no?
Unless it's a violation and the enforcement
Okay,
order
well,
requests an
I-
after the fact notice.
The work needs to be done, it seems like we've been arguing over this work for a year or so, but if the work needs to be done, it needs to be done. I don't know what I could say, but as far as the legal, I shouldn't say legal, as far as what we need to make sure that we've done everything in the right way, we need the documentation. So, I don't know, that's just
And
my
just
opinion.
for you, it's a safeguard for the town. It's not anything against one individual project. That's how the town carries out their business, so that they have documentation that carries over. And then it's documented, it's recorded at the registry of deeds. And that's why it's done that way, with the order of conditions, the extension, or the certificate of compliance, or partial
Well,
COC.
the town has other safeguards in this respect. They have the bond, they certainly have enforcement power. So in order to satisfy the other arm of the town, being the planning board,
Mhm.
We are looking for some flexibility.
So what, knowing, I just provided you with information stating we need documentation, establishing that this work is still valid. You have a wetlands permit of some sort, whether that be a COC, an order of conditions, an enforcement order. Those are the safeguards. So, yes, we could, you want to continue the work, and we'll do an enforcement and state, you didn't do the work, we're gonna do an after the fact filing. It creates very messy, and I think it opens
Well,
the
that's what
applicant.
we're talking about right now, right? It's laying the framework for what the enforcement would look like, and asking for the commission to say, in the spirit of cooperation, the enforcement would be, here's what we expect the scope to be based on the planning board's directives. This is what we expect the timeline would be. We expect that, we'll get the as-built from Ducharme and Dillis for the slope stabilization, the rest of this work by the June 18th meeting. And then that would be it.
Comments from the,
Well, I don't know, feel free to respond first. The other neighbors, well, I'm Lauren Silly, 147, Pond. The other neighbors, I think we all feel the same. I've been getting updates from them, they wanted to be here. That we're tired of this, as you know from other meetings. We are ready for the bond to be pulled and have someone else complete the work. That was approved at town meeting. That's where we are. I will say I'm trying not to get the planning board side of things involved too much because I know it's separate, but it's hard to completely separate them. The applicant has basically done a complete 180 at the last planning board meeting, since the one before that, because before he was not agreeing to doing the things that need to be done, then he came to the last one agreeing to do it by June 15th. I don't know if that's because now he knows we can pull him. I don't know why the 180, but that happened. So he's given until June 15th. I believe Ducharme and Dillis has been on the property to stake out things he needs to do. I believe the applicant's been on the property to talk to a landscaper, but besides that, no actual work has been done since the last planning board meeting a couple weeks ago and the deadline of June 15th. So, time's ticking, and we still don't see that he's, it's been the same pattern. They wait until right before a deadline, they try to do something, they come saying, well, look, we did this, but it's not done. We all feel like we're done giving extensions. It's too much. I think there is one, I don't know how much you're communicating with planning board, but one of the things that he's agreed to do as part of that work is digging a swale on 147's property that goes, you'd have to see it on the plans, but pretty much from near a shed on our property down to very close to the wetlands area. So that hasn't been discussed, but I'm assuming that work does affect, will have some effect on the wetlands area. I'm not expert in that, but, so if he's allowed to do that work without the order of conditions extended, it sounds like that would have some effect on the Conservation Commission's.
Right, so the planning board and I are obviously in correspondence. In addition to that, that's why we're in this situation now, and I appreciate you updating us on what the planning board's expectations are. And I guess I'd like to add the comment that we've stated at other meetings where, just like with the swale, and you said you'll provide the update to the commission. The commission, I'm not saying they feel this way, I have no idea what their feelings are. If you bring forward what they had requested in terms of the alteration from the original plans, you still need to request from the commission for them to approve that. If they don't see it as a field amendment, you'll have to file a completely new notice of intent, just specific to that portion of the project, to basically recognize that change. And I'm not saying that's what they're going to do, I'm not saying that's not what they're going to do.
I know
What
in
I'm
that
saying is we
particular
don't
instance,
have that documentation.
you and I disagree a little bit about that because we are not even within the aura on that wetlands.
So we'll have Amy
as
assess that as
Yeah,
well, while
well,
she's out there.
the one that was on the approved plan, that septic system side slope is outside that buffer zone, it's outside the 100 foot,
So it came into the resource area though, that's when it became jurisdictional and it stays
and we corrected
jurisdictional
that
until
within
it's
3
stabilized.
days after you told us about it, and we had a meeting with you.
Yep.
And that meeting in September, and we corrected it within 3 days. We had 6 guys out there, and we corrected the problem, and we stabilized it. So we acted as soon as we knew that that was gonna happen. And the rest of this work that we're talking about doing right now is work that was in the original notice of intent. The 2 retention ponds that we have
Yep.
don't quite have the capacity that it was designed for. So they want us to make the ponds a little bit bigger by excavating out a little of the side slopes. And they want us to reseed and reloom the edges of the pavement along the common driveway. So we agreed to put screen loom along the edge of the driveway and hydroseed it, so that it would reestablish itself. So we're not talking about a lot of major work. Ducharme and Dillis had to do the as-built plan, submitted to the planning board, review the comments. Then Ducharme and Dillis just went out there on Monday and Friday and staked out those detention areas so that our landscape company could go in there and do the work appropriately. We had to have the engineers stake it out for us. So we haven't been dragging our feet. A lot of the work couldn't be done in the wintertime, in the wet spring, and Ducharme and Dillis had to do the as-built, and we had to get it approved.
So, and I know now you seem to be responding relative to things, and I say relative because there have been emails and things previously that were not ignored, but not addressed with an immediate response, or not addressed to come in right away, and I understand life happens, people have conflicting schedules, I understand that. But this isn't new, this isn't just this year, something that couldn't get done over the winter. This was starting 3 years ago, before I was even here, when the original order was issued. Then you received at least 1 extension recently. So,
This one extension.
correct. So what I appreciate that some work couldn't get done over the winter, but this is going on 4 years now. So
And
just
here we are.
let's,
Here we are.
yes, no, and I
think also,
understand
you know, to say that things haven't been addressed, I don't think is appropriate. When there was erosion that traveled into
Yeah.
the river, that was addressed within 3 days.
that. Correct.
3 days' time.
With the temporary stabilization
With what
that the
we
commission
expect to be
requested.
a permanent stabilization.
Okay, and that was not discussed with the commission,
And that's what
there
we're
was
here
no
to
new
discuss.
conversation. And that's great, but I'm stating, again, as built, showing what's there now,
That's what's
this is
coming.
what we think is finalized,
That's what's coming.
but now it's after the order of conditions has expired.
Well, the order of conditions expired before that.
Right. So, but what I'm saying is, you wait for these gaps and
No.
then it's catch-up, which is,
So I think we lived in the past. The objective here is for everyone to get this completed. So we should focus on the future.
And just.
yes, I believe so, but
If you give
again,
us
you're
direction
in
which way he
a,
wants to do it, if you think we shouldn't do anything out there until the 18th,
We'll communicate that to the
we'll
planning.
communicate that to the planning board, and that's what we'll do. We're not gonna do it under an enforcement order,
Right.
because we're fighting the enforcement order that we already have, so. We're
So
not-
basically, you're saying that they need to redo the paperwork here,
so
to
they
get the
need
stuff done,
to do
rather than
it,
saying, rather than somebody saying, oh, we're gonna do it.
right,
Okay.
so,
We need to have documentation that says this is what we're gonna do.
yes,
I
so what we're gonna do,
That's that's the bottom line that I get out of this thing.
right,
And unfortunately, the meeting's the 18th, so, and the 15th, I don't know. But I think that, I would have to agree with Rebecca and the rest of the board, I hope, agrees with me, the documentation according to what needs to get done. This is like a new project, isn't it?
No.
Wait,
It's-
So
wait, you've already, the other one's expired. So the other one's expired, the other condition thing is expired, so now we have to do it all over, do something, you have to do more work to do, so you need a new order to do that. Doesn't that say new project, or am I wrong?
so the commission, at their discretion, at the most recent extension, determined that they were able to extend it.
Right,
So, based on that,
but was it June
Technically,
1st, the deadline
yes,
to extend
so
it?
that was, no, that was the deadline to complete all the work.
Okay,
Now, because of that discretion was given before, the same discretion should be adhered now. If the commission wishes to extend it, the commission doesn't have to. The commission they can also come forward with an RDA, say the commission doesn't extend it, but that's an irrelevant question because we had no documentation even requesting an extension of the order, RDA, COC. So now,
So the
Back to
RDA,
it.
they couldn't work under
No.
that for the next 2 weeks anyways.
no, because there's
Okay.
technically, there's nothing in front of us. So what the representative for the applicant is trying to speak to is there's an operation management plan within the order of conditions, and would the commission see that as documentation enough and to serve as a safeguard to complete the work, should the commission find that the work that they have to finalize is within the realm of that operation management plan. But again, none of you have that before you this evening, so I don't even think they could address that
Well,
until the
they had
18th.
they had the O&M plan, I mean, that's.
Not
what was-
before them this evening, though.
In-
So this is-
In what way? I mean, this isn't a public hearing, this isn't a notice public hearing, I understand
No,
that.
it's an informal conversation that you were to come request something from the commission.
Right,
They can't make a vote this evening.
well, they can't make a vote to issue an order of conditions to make a determination of applicability.
Right.
But they can make a determination administratively as to whether the operations and maintenance plan covers, you know, in their mind, this scope of work.
Right, but when was the last time they were able to read that, is my point.
Well, right, and I'm sure it's been some time since.
Right, so my point is, with all due respect, is that any even determination that they make, we don't have time for them to sit here and read through the operation management plan, or maintenance plan, excuse me. That would be something, again, that would have to be decided during the June 18th public meeting. Even just an informal, relatively informal determination, or a roll call poll determination, however you want to format that. They don't have the proper documentation in front of them to fulfill that request. Unless the commission feels otherwise, I don't feel that that's the case. If they feel that they're comfortable with doing that, that's fine. But I think had you known, I think that was what it would fall upon, it would have been insightful for you to come forward with the operation maintenance plan items and list out, okay, this is the work, because I didn't even know what work needs to be left because we weren't updated yet, so I can't even update the commission on that. Match that up, side by side and list, this is directly related to this. I would have said yes, the commission can definitely look at it, make a roll call vote or an informed determination, but I mean, would that not have been
Do you know
appropriate?
when the next planning board meeting is it 21st?
I believe it's after the 18th.
Yeah. So would you suggest that we submit an RDA, have a hearing on the 18th?
I'm gonna take one more question from the audience. There's one more person waiting to ask, and I'll kind of give you my thoughts too.
Mr. Chairman, could you ask this lady to identify herself, please?
Me?
Oh,
Oh,
sure.
I did. Lauren
Lauren
Silly,
Silly.
147 Long Hill Road.
Thank you.
So is that the only question? Oh, okay.
I believe there's a planning board meeting on June 12th. That's what I thought was next, because we were supposed to be at that one.
So the 12th.
I don't know what their schedule is for this month, but I assume if they had not had one this month, they typically have two, I believe, if I'm not mistaken. So,
That was when we were told that they would be given an update on what work had been done to decide.
but they haven't had one prior to now, obviously, because
Right,
it just
right,
became June.
Right.
So what I'm just clarifying is I believe they have 2 a month, just like the Conservation Commission. I don't know what dates those are though.
See, what throws me is, and I'm thinking about the neighbors too. I don't know that we can extend their orders tonight, but I don't want to put them in a position necessarily where they say they won't or can't do what the planning board's asking them to do. I don't know if that slows everything down further.
Well, I think they put themselves in that position by not preparing.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I tend to agree.
But there's another thing too, if we get it done quicker, that gives us more time to respond in case it isn't completed by whatever date we decide.
Right.
We decide to move on in a different direction to, and getting work done before, the fall sets in.
There's no meeting on the town. on the planning board.
So I
I
think,
can suggest.
Go ahead, please.
Well,
Yeah,
one
yeah,
other
yeah.
alternative that we go forward under a maintenance, under the operation and maintenance provisions and management provisions, and at the same time, we file as-built plan that the planning board wants us to make the changes on with an RDA tomorrow morning. We can still have the hearing and move forward under an operation O&M plan, and still have the RDA at your meeting on the 18th. But
so here's my question. And I'm asking it to hear your answer. Operation management, maintenance or management plan, is it for after or during construction?
Well, I mean,
Both.
it's everything. It's,
and stormwater management plan and O&M plan, in fact, it's cited and recorded on driveway covenants for the homeowners too. So it's ongoing to maintain it. It's using BMPs and,
yeah, it's a lie.
But it's to maintain, not to construct.
Well, but to maintain in a appropriate and functional manner, and the representation from the town's engineer, correct, is that currently the basins are not sufficiently sized to handle the
that's a little too
capacity.
small.
So if the maintenance means,
To reconstruct.
Aluminum seating, side slopes, you know, for
Stabilization.
stabilization, erosion control.
and it does talk about vegetative stabilization and that sort of thing in the plan, so.
How much work is there? Is there only this work that we're talking about? What does the as-built plan do?
So that's what,
Changes nothing? There's no additional work to be done at that point?
no, so the as-built plan, in terms of what they would be bringing forward to the commission would be, here's what we've done, it's representative of the work that's been completed as a whole for the project. You basically present the as-built once you feel the work is completed. In addition to that, any slight alterations that have been approved by the commission previously are included on those as-built plans as well.
And one of the things that we're gonna be requesting of the commission is on the as-built plan, the slope stabilization modification for lot 5.
Right.
which shows, you know, the current stabilization as opposed to a boulder wall.
And did you, just because I know that's going to obviously be at our next meeting, did you or can you get a letter from the engineer stating that that's as sufficient or better than Lot 5 slope? Because that will provide the commission with the information they need to make that decision, whether it's a field amendment or an appropriate amendment.
Yes, Duchamp Dillis went out there and inspected it with us.
Okay, so I would,
You're looking for some narrative from them.
writing from them, and if Fred Hamway's been out as well, include his oversight on that as well.
Well, he didn't inspect any of the septic system.
Yeah, he's more roadway.
So he's just in the
Okay,
common driveway.
That's fine then.
The,
I would have your engineer,
and the other thing I would
Address the
suggest at
license.
this point is, you know, obviously going out there and trying to bring the boulders out would be more disruptive to that area.
I would like to see that in writing from the engineer. And I appreciate that, and I do understand that insight. But at this point, we have what the commission requested for temporary stabilization, which you feel is permanent stabilization, fine, but we need sort of a
That's fine.
third-party
Yeah.
engineer who's stating that this is sufficient.
And
And it seems like they've already done that analysis, so providing that in writing, so we have that, would be beneficial. But so back to, I guess, the work, or, so I would pose the question to the commission to contemplate as we're past our next hearing item,
I know.
is they are asking that they can continue work under the operation and maintenance plan for the work that's left for, specifically for the planning board, that's allowed until the 15th, or do we,
Is it
Sort of.
complete at the 15th?
they are required to be
Under
complete at the
question at all?
15th? Well, I'll let you answer that, because planning board gave you that deadline, I know nothing of that deadline, aside from they requested you to continue work.
we told them we would have it finished.
So
by-
basically, they would have 11 days to complete this work.
Yes.
I mean,
No extensions beyond that.
Well, I mean, was that what the conversation was?
That was the conversation with Wayne.
That was the conversation.
they,
So the
Do we have a way of putting a stop at the 15th also?
Well, right now, we have the ability to put a
We have
stop
nothing.
right now.
We have
So-
nothing in hand, right?
Yes, we have enforcement. If they continue to work past that, then we issue enforcement.
Okay.
But the question is, between now and then, how would the commission like to handle what they are tasked to do, which isn't, technically, it's no business of the commission what planning board deadline is, the commission deadline. But as we have been making a practice of sort of meeting planning board's deadlines, or trying to match their deadlines, that's an argument as well.
You know what, I think we would be more comfortable, actually, if we filed the RDA request tomorrow. We'll have a hearing on the 18th, and
But the problem is, but in between now and the 18th
we'll have
is
to
the
do our
problem.
work
No
after
work,
that.
no work until then.
Because
So
we
they'll just
already
be
have
doing
an
the
enforcement
review.
order that we're fighting,
Yeah.
and we'll notify the planning board that we hit this bump, and hopefully you can notify her as well.
Mhm.
And I think the planning board has a meeting at the end of June. We'll have all the work done by the end of June. And we'll just have to do it that way.
So,
So I will bring the paperwork on RDA and the as-built plan from Duchamp Dillis that shows the work that we're going to do, because that's already been before the planning board. So I have that plan that we can show.
and this is work that's flush with what was proposed originally.
Yes. And I'll bring that in tomorrow, follow up with you, and if you could give us a hearing on the 18th, that would be great.
If you get it into me tomorrow,
I will.
I will be able to
Do you
submit
know what
that.
the fine fee is? Is it $75?
$45 for RDA. And then that, whichever paper you bring it to, there's an ad fee associated, but you'd have to contact them.
Do we have any guesstimate ETA on when we might hear from Horsley Witten? Or
She said she was gonna send the paperwork right out to you,
Okay.
and she told me she would meet me in the next week or two. And like I said, because it's a wetlands replication, it's gonna take 2 years anyway.
Right.
So, but,
The
She's
engagement,
going
just to
out.
be clear, is with the commission, so if
Correct.
the proposal doesn't come to us, it will go to you. So you
right, but we were
Right.
giving you the
Right.
options to engage,
Yes.
Right.
yes.
So maybe we can require that get to us by the 18th, so we have it in front of us all at once.
Certainly
Yeah.
by then,
Yeah.
I would think.
We should have it by then. I would agree with that. If we don't, I would be concerned, and then they would be able to pick one of the other two to engage. But as Amy has reached out directly to just confirm that, you know, that was the case, and this is the project that the review is being sought for, I would say she's going to be turning this over in a timely manner, unless they were notified otherwise, but it doesn't
No.
seem so. Once I receive the quote, I will be reaching out to them to be providing that funding to be placed in a separate account. What's basically done is the account creates a review account specific for this and only this, gets deposited. Once the work's complete, then it gets paid and taken out. I would foresee, like I said, we have that documentation before the 18th, so it's not really that nothing's getting done, because we still need a third-party review anyway, regardless if we have them continue the work, or regardless if we don't let them continue the work. So that's my thoughts.
In terms of the filing, so we can be prepared for the 18th on the proposed field amendment, we do hope to have that portion of the site plan, and obviously we'll have the narrative. What other filing would you like to see, or the commission like to see?
Well, the
associated with
continued
that?
work that you would like to be,
Do it.
Well,
Yes, we'll put that in there.
No, I'm just talking about the slope at this point, so is there any other, you know,
so the slope, and then if Amy comes back and says, you know, your replication area isn't sufficient, it's not gonna be worth it to dig everything back up and remove it, maybe you need to alter that.
right,
So
the
for-
replication area, right, so, but in terms of requesting the field amendment from the commission at the hearing on the 18th,
Yeah,
you would need obviously the as-built plan, the new
we
as-built.
would need a plan, yes.
And you would need the narrative that you talked about from Duchamp and Dilla saying that that's a sufficient permanent stabilization.
Yep.
Is that all there?
I mean, unless the commission would feel that they would like any supplemental information.
That's, I guess, what I'm asking.
Again, yeah, and so I would sort of frame that to the commission, whatever, I'm not the one applying for it, but I do appreciate you asking, because you wanna provide the sufficient amount of information. Again, providing this is what was proposed, this is what was there, this is what's there now. Engineer's letter to supplement that, stating it's sufficient, it's not sufficient, it's equal, better, lesser than. And then, I guess I would say, does it meet any requirements that were supposed to be met before regarding the slope? So, is there any washout potential, anything like that that we've seen in the past? And then any continued maintenance that needs to be done specific to that versus what was there? Basically, anything that you believe will give you a strong argument for the commission to fulfill whatever you are requesting, that's what you should supply to the commission.
Okay. All right.
I'll make this really quick, I know we're late, but is there gonna be a time when the board is, considering pulling the bond and either voting on that, or, I mean, like now, the deadline was June 15th, now it's gonna have to be the end of June, if planning board agrees, like, planning board will have to decide their own thing, but, you know, is it, if they don't come with what they need June 18th, you guys talk about it again, I mean, what, like, I just, if it's not done
Sure.
by them, we need someone else to do it.
Right, and for me personally, I can't speak for everybody else too. I'm usually very curious to hear what the third-party consultant comes in and says, you know, that yes, this is done correctly, no, this wasn't, this is what needs to be fixed. I understand what you're asking, and I think that at that point in time is probably what we would consider to see what the report says, and the report could very well say, everything's fine, they just need to monitor the plantings for another year, in which case, you know, it is what it is at that point. If it's significantly different and we need to ask them to make changes, you know, we'll probably put a timeline on them, give them significant time, and then we'll probably consider if it doesn't get done. And you heard Rebecca, and I know you guys have been here, it has been a long time. There were months of not hearing back or not communicating and not even saying, I'm sorry, it's the middle of the winter, we'll get back to you in the spring. Just not hearing. So I appreciate you coming in now, but, you know, blowing through deadlines and then just showing up and kind of asking for a little forgiveness, you know, it gets old after a year. It gets old. And you can tell the neighbors have been coming to these meetings. I appreciate everybody on the board's time at these meetings. You know, they're here every other week to hear these things. That's so much time that they should not have to be spending here. It would have been great if we could have dealt with this last year when we asked for the extension, 6 months ago, 8 months ago.
Wow.
And I'm happy to keep moving forward. Again, I want to hear a lot what Horsley Witten has to say. But yeah, we'd consider anything, you know, at that point, if that makes sense.
Okay, so after the third party. Okay.
Yep. I know the commission has a lot to deal with, but one thing we did want to address quickly, and we emailed with Rebecca about, was the fines associated with the migration of materials into the aura. That amount is over $7,000, and so we've appealed that to the district court. Our hearing is later this month, and we're prepared to proceed with that hearing, but the hope is that we could have a discussion with the commission about some reasonable abatement of that fine, which we think, quite frankly, is the time period from when we determined that there was an issue to when it was corrected, which was 3 days. We think that that is what the fine is designed to address. When that was corrected, there was really no reason for fines beyond that. We have other issues with the fines from a legal perspective, but I'm not going to litigate it in this forum. I do want to present that to the board. We're prepared to pay that amount of fine, but if the board is not willing to accept that, then we'd have to proceed with the appeal.
I mean, I'm happily whole, but I seem to remember the time we did ask for things like the as-built, like the re-engineered plans. And that was probably, I know you said,
But the
within
fine
3 days,
notice-
within 3 days we pulled everything out, and then a year and a half later, I still haven't gotten re-engineered plans, I still haven't gotten an as-built. I mean, the ball was
fine-
kind of dropped at that point.
With all due respect,
It's just what I'm saying.
The
But go ahead.
fine notice only addresses the migration of materials into the aura.
Gotcha.
So what,
Just solid.
to clarify,
Yeah.
so the enforcement order, and we're not going into detail because of potential
Sure.
litigation. The fines that were issued were addressed and laid out in various letters, you know, warnings, things like that. And then they were issued. So their question is, would the commission be amendable to decrease that amount, to my
Right,
understanding?
accepting 3 days worth of fines, which is $300 a day, $900.
Yep, so $300 a day per violation, that they feel is appropriate for addressing when they feel the violation occurred to when they, again, feel that it was addressed. For once they came into the commission, said the temporary stabilization is XYZ, they went out and carried out work to stabilize, and they feel that it's within those 3 days that they have assessed. So $300 per day per
Yep.
violation.
How many violations?
That's,
So
let's see, how did we get to that 6,000 number?
I can look at the letters, but it's $300 per day per violation. And honestly, I can't remember off the top of my head if we separated, or no, it was just in the adjacent upland resource area.
You know, it's just my opinion that if it's in appeals now, and the town lawyer has it,
Well, so here's, Here's
if that's where it is, then
that is how it is. The reason for it, I do respect that they are coming forward to try and work with the commission on this. Although it is alleviating them of a financial impact, I guess you could say, as a result. they're trying to work with the commission to both save themselves time and money from going to litigation, along with the town saving time and money from going
I
to
agree.
litigation.
I agree.
Because we weren't the ones, we issued the enforcement, the violation, we provided our reasoning, they feel that it's in excess. So they would like to, instead of going through the appeal process, through the court system, to come to the commission and say, we believe it's 3 days is manageable, we'll pay that amount. Avoid litigation, basically, a formal litigation process. Deal with the enforcement in that manner, and then it's closed out, basically, versus those fines and fees sitting there. And the amount that was built up over time due to various manners that were outlined in the letters.
Can we just say we're happy to consider that, but I mean, I don't have my notes from a year
It's-
ago, and I have no idea what happened
Certainly,
back then.
I would say that the only, time crunch there is that we do have a hearing, I think it's on the 24th, and I have to confirm when.
26th, I think.
The 26th, thank you. And so perhaps actually the 18th meeting would be a good time to finish this discussion.
Right.
But we did want to present that to the
Sure.
board. so-
Yeah.
And I do appreciate you presenting that prior to allow the time period for the commission. And I don't mean that in a snarky manner, but I do appreciate that, because then I can provide the commission with the documentation that's in the file. And in addition to that, you can get us information for the RDA, get us information, if you would like, for anything related to that request as well regarding the fines prior to that litigation date,
Very good.
All right,
very quickly. So, we have reached just circling back. So we're doing the third-party review, which I will hear from Amy. I'll give her a call tomorrow if I haven't heard from her yet. And then I will be calling you to reconfirm all that. And then when I receive the quote, you'll obviously be getting that. I expect the turnaround time to be relatively immediate in terms of funding that, so we can get that process
Correct.
rolling. In addition, between now and the 18th, you're stating you're not carrying out any work aside from the review until
Any jurisdictional work, I mean, there may be.
jurisdictional work, yes, understood. But you will be submitting the RDA tomorrow.
yes.
And if the RDA is not submitted tomorrow, no work's continuing anyways, and
Correct.
there's nothing, okay.
Is this slope thing in the pond, is that jurisdictional?
It's within
The
100
slope.
feet of the.
So it is. You said what's with that, okay. So that's something they can't work on until we get, so they.
Yeah, they can't work on anything
It's
jurisdictional.
self-contained and it's in the detention area, so it's not gonna silt up or go into the wetlands area because it's in a bowl, but it is within 100 feet, so.
How long do you
So
think it
is the
would take to
commission
get that
comfortable with
done?
Landscaper that we hired says it's gonna take us, he said he's gonna do all the work in 3 days.
3 days.
And that includes lumen seeding the entire side slopes of the road and
And why do this pond thing that's going on, 3 days?
So if we get the RDA by the 18th,
we can still do it before the planning board meeting.
So, if you get, just for the recording, if you get a negative determination allowing you to continue the
to
work,
proceed with that scope of
Yes.
work. Right,
then you would be able to continue the work.
right.
Okay, so submit that document, the RDA tomorrow morning. I need it before noon.
Okay.
I'll be honest, I have a site visit from 9 to 10 tomorrow morning, so you can either come before then or between probably 10:15 and 11. I should be back in the office.
All right, I'll be between 10 and 11.
Okay. And then provide the documentation. Documentation needs to be submitted if you want it considered for the June 18th meeting. It needs to be submitted, by noon the Thursday prior. That's in our local bylaw. So the as-built, any narratives that you want considered during that meeting,
Okay,
okay?
all right,
All right,
thank you.
thank you.
Take care.
You as well.
thank you.
Thank you.
620. Yeah. All right. The Bolton Conservation Commission will now continue a public hearing under the provisions of Mass General Law, Chapter 131, Section 40, and under the Bolton Wetland Bylaw, Chapter 233, to consider the notice of intent filed by Jack Holbrook on behalf of the applicant for a proposed fire pond inclusive of dry hydrant to be installed in an existing basin located at 626 Main Street. Is there an update?
Yes.
Okay.
Yay.
Excuse me. We had received the DEP file number, excuse me, which is 068-2 for the project proposed at 626 Main Street. The only comments that were established were to just administratively clarify the type of project. After some correspondence with myself, the applicant, and DEP, they have established that it is classified as a limited project, which only affects it on the DEP side of things and just the filing. The project's still the same, it's just what it's categorized as. That information has been resubmitted in terms of, it was literally one checkbox that needed to be altered. That's been altered, appropriately altered. In addition to that, Natural Heritage had emailed us directly in the event that the actual documentation doesn't arrive in time for the meeting, establishing that they had no concerns with the proposed project area. In addition, it's not within estimated habitat for rare and endangered species, rare and endangered species, excuse me. In addition to that, they had stated that because of the way they had filed with Natural Heritage, because the fire department can basically file in bulk, they filed for a few and then they'll come to us just to get that clarified though, in terms of what Natural Heritage is going to need. They were concerned about 2 others they would like to see more documentation on, but again, not this one, but just to clarify their email, and I did call to just confirm that. That being said, DEP had no outstanding issues aside from that administrative error. In addition, the Natural Heritage had no issues with the project either. So, if it's up to the commission what they would like to do next, I would suggest that we establish where we would like to see erosion controls, specifically within the work area, because they are basically cleaning up a basin in addition to the vegetation around the edges of that. I don't have concerns with really anything coming into it from the parking lot area, but rather if we have another couple weeks of rain and they can't really get to a dry period, I would just like to see, I guess, the commission encourage some silt fence at the rear outlet side.
But it does look like that the parking lot does sort of drain into that.
Yeah, so that's been that way.
Yeah, so that's not what you're talking about. You're talking about it going further downstream.
Right, so on the opposite side,
Makes sense.
because when the water's up, it does provide an outlet
Yeah.
to the larger border vegetated wetland.
Yeah, I didn't go down to the back end of that thing. It was all
Yeah.
muddy and jumping and everything, yeah. That, okay. And I know this doesn't relate to it, but do fire ponds become vernal ponds?
Quite possibly.
So they are one and the same.
They're
Like
the
on-
same, basically.
On the corner of Main Street across from Town Hall,
That one
that's
over
exactly what's there.
Yeah,
Is it was a potential vernal pool, they put the fire pond there, or rather the dry hydrant, maintain it as a fire pond, which is very minimal maintenance. It stays as that resource
yeah,
area.
okay. That was just, I just was curious about that. I don't think it makes any difference. I mean, it's better than asking me to put in this
You're not
$30,000
filling it.
sprinkler system.
Yeah, yep.
After the fact, but.
Excuse me.
Do you have any comments on 626, Martha?
No, I just wanted to change the batteries in your clock.
So we,
Please.
Yeah.
It's not within our jurisdiction, by the way.
But I donated the clock.
Oh, well,
The other one was hit by someone and destroyed. Thanks, guys.
no problem.
So what are we gonna do? Do we have to sign off on something for this?
So, you need to either close or continue the public hearing, and then either issue or deny in order of conditions associated with the project.
And if I remember correctly, last time we were comfortable with the project, which is why we kind of told them they needed to come here, we're waiting to hear back from
Right.
everything.
I don't have a problem with this.
Is there a way, an easy way for us to add on the erosion controls that you had discussed?
8:14.
So,
It can
Yeah,
be
we're supposed to
something
be
that's just conditioned.
What?
We blew right through the schedule.
There's a lot of talk.
yeah,
It's a crying, guys.
sorry.
Is my- It needed to be addressed. The,
I know.
Well, sending consolation, this meeting has taken me less time than it took me to drive back from Boston. And I'm not even as frustrated as I was when I got there.
you can condition your erosion controls to be at the, outlet and inlet side of the pond, along with our usual. Does that make sense? But in addition to that,
They actually gonna dredge it? Is that what they're gonna do with it?
they may vacuum truck it.
Oh,
They do it a couple different ways,
yeah.
but that's one option.
So what do you think of turtles and all that stuff gonna get sucked up?
So they have to wait until the dry period,
Oh, okay.
so that's after.
Because there was a log in there, and there were a lot of turtles on the log.
Yeah.
Convention.
Yeah.
But it was just, I don't know whether or not that was something like.
Yeah, so that's, I drafted in the conditions along with that type of a resource area, we typically encourage, just like 811 Main, we encourage it to be done during a dry period for exactly that reason, along with migration of materials.
So during dry period, does it actually dry right up? Does it
No.
drain out? No?
Not completely,
The turtles just leave.
mostly, but not completely.
Okay.
The other items that were included were plantings or reseeding, if it needs to be done. I don't think it will. But in terms of the installation of the dry hydrant, if any seeding needs to be done, seeding needs to be approved by myself or Concom, which they can do as we've seen at subsequent meetings. In addition, that needs to be done by November 2019. So this work's going to be done during a dry period, preferably July or August 2019. And then our usual boilerplate of no stockpiles within 100 feet of a resource area. And both the Wetlands Protection Act and, well, actually our bylaw provides an exemption for this work. And in addition to that, under the limited project, it's permittable under the Wetlands Protection Act. And that's why they don't have to create a replication,
Makes sense.
because it's basically an in-kind. It'd be the same as clearing a waterway. And in the Wetlands Protection Act, it actually specifies a fire pond so long as it's not impacting rare and endangered species.
Yes. NHESP. All right. Is there anything, as you crafted them, about the additional erosion controls in there? That's the one thing we would need to.
So it's just placement of erosion controls. So I would say whoever makes the motion would be issue the order as drafted, and then include a special condition regarding placement of erosion controls at the inlet and outlet
I'd probably
of the
say,
basin the resource area contained within the basin, and then other locations as needed, so you're not limiting the erosion controls.
What's wrong with me?
Sorry.
No, that's all right, I was gonna put it on you, and I still might. So I'd like to make a motion that we close the public hearing for 626 Main Street.
A second.
Aye.
All those in favor? Aye. All right. I'd like to make a motion that we approve the notice of intent, or the order of conditions for 626 Main Street as drafted and submitted with the following additional condition, that proper erosion controls be put into place at both the inlet and the outlet of the resource area, and of the pond enclosed by the resource area, and that they are approved by the conservation agent of the town of Bolton before work begins.
Yes.
Okay. Do I hear a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. So approved. All right. Good to go on to 91?
Yes.
Okay. The Bolton Conservation Commission will now entertain a motion to issue a certificate of compliance with ongoing conditions as drafted for the constructed project referenced under DEP file number 112-0641, now having been established as 91 Century Mill Road.
So I'm just passing around the order of conditions that you just
Yeah,
issued.
you're on. Yep.
With the addition, excuse me, of the condition added this meeting,
Perfect.
would you like me to go through the ongoing conditions?
For
that
91
are
Century,
drafted? Yeah,
if you want to do a quick summary.
okay,
Are those the ones
so,
you emailed out?
yes,
Oh,
There were like 28 of them or something?
well,
That's close, yeah.
no, just kidding, there is 26.
Alright.
it's 28.
And the reasoning behind that is because, again, this is previously established as Lot 1 Century Mill Road. There's very close proximity to the resource areas, vernal pool, 2 vernal pools, which are now certified vernal pools, very limited and restricted in terms of the disturbance area on site. So the items basically reflect any ongoing maintenance items that were enumerated in the conditions that were proposed, some of which include the driveway needs to remain in perpetuity as a more porous asphalt, which is what's there currently, so they can't pave over it unless it's within the same material frame. And then maintenance, addressing proper driveway maintenance, how often it should be, where to locate snow relief materials, which is outside 75 foot on the septic area. Prohibition of washing vehicles in the driveway due to runoff within certified vernal pool. Limits of disturbance remain delineated in perpetuity by the existing split rail fence around the perimeter of the yard, which is in place currently. Again, this site is definitely delineated by that fence as the limit of work. Trying to think of anything that doesn't have to do with that. Native bushes, shrubbery, those are there perpetuously. If they need to replant it, they'll have to replant. If they'd like to replace it with something else, they can replace it, but a vegetative buffer has to be between the driveway. Allow that area to naturalize, that we had them pull up the lawn because it wasn't approved previously. Debris, again, limiting where the debris, brush, lawn clippings, windrowing, burning, burying will take place. And vehicles need to stay on driveways, so even if they have maintenance done, they can't enter beyond that split rail fence. And then it also addresses the commission and its agents carrying over the permissions to enter upon the premises to evaluate and the portions of the ongoing conditions in an appropriate manner, always giving written or a telephone advance notice. And then just the typical boilerplate of carrying over to the next owner if anyone should purchase it, and it continues with the deed of the property. Any questions?
See none. I'd like to make a motion that we issue a certificate of compliance for 91 Century Mill Road
With ongoing conditions.
with the ongoing conditions as drafted and submitted this evening. Here a second.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Competitive second.
He's just too damn good.
So you can sign that.
Beautiful.
So I got a question, is that a lot of conditions?
Ongoing
There's
conditions,
no-
is that considered a lot?
Yeah.
Yes.
That's about as many as you put on any home developed anywhere.
I
But it's
wouldn't,
right
I
next to
wouldn't
the
even,
wetlands area, that's the-
No, it is.
Yeah, typically
It
we
was
would-
shoehorned in, yes, I understand
typically
that.
we wouldn't
It
see
seems
that.
like a lot.
yeah, in that, both the developer who had purchased the property.
No, I understand
We had
the
had a
history of it,
conversation
right.
that they were aware that it's a tight site, there will be ongoing conditions, maintenance items.
Right.
We don't know if the residents were made aware of that. I've tried to make them aware of it
And
and
how do they
requested
pass
other
this on to
things.
the next owner?
It was right
It's
in the MLS
reported
listed.
at the registry of deeds,
Yeah.
so if they do a title search,
Oh, it would be in the
search,
title
it will
search.
come up,
They will see it.
yes.
So it gets attached to the deed when it goes into the
Yes.
registry.
Yes. And I have had many calls of things that did not receive certificates of compliance or confusing ongoing conditions that need clarification. So I do know that it does get caught in the midst of
Title search.
this title search process, yes.
So you pay $1,000 for it.
Right.
Right, it's worth it.
Otherwise you can never wash your car in the driveway.
I haven't washed my car in
I don't know,
anyway.
it's the root. The,
It's changing the oil in the wetlands, it's a problem.
yeah,
Intensity.
you should be doing
Yeah,
that.
good idea.
Something that we should know.
So- The Tom Denny Nature Camp has filed a burn permit with the fire department, and this sort of came through the ranks, I guess you could say, but there's really not many ranks, regarding who needs to sign off on the burn permit, because Tom Denny Nature Camp doesn't own the property, Town of Bolton does, and it's the responsibility of the Conservation Commission to manage and maintain that property on behalf of the town. Long story short, Tom Denny Nature Camp filed for the burn permit for small campfires specific to camp. They, I think, have 1 or 2 evenings where they do a sleepover, they do a fire there. Is the commission okay with that?
Yeah,
Perfectly fine with that.
How big a
My kids
fire?
have to tell you.
how big a
Yes.
fire? Well, it's
I thought they were
Couple
burning
pallets
brush or
and-
something.
yeah.
like that.
No, that will be coming up next year.
Oh.
From me,
Little
not from
campsites,
Humboldt.
that's great, that's good.
Okay. So the commission's okay with that. Ready to discuss that. Land use policy. Another time?
No, I looked through,
Okay.
I'll give
I
other
thought
people
that
more
was gonna
time.
be good.
I actually finally had a chance to read through it and look through it. I thought it was fine, I thought it was comprehensive. There was some of the wording I kind of wanted to look
That's
at.
fine, we can mess around with it.
But no, I thought it hit the high points,
Okay.
thought it was explained well. It seemed to cover everything I could think of.
Okay. So I'll send a Word, 'cause I think it was a PDF. So I'll send a
Yeah.
Word version.
Yeah,
So
if
if
you
anyone
don't
wants to tweak the language, we can do that. And then whenever we figure out the finalized version, we'll sort of just establish it, not sort of, we'll establish at a public meeting that this is what the commission is requiring now, take a vote, and put that in place.
So basically, that's for all
Seemed pretty,
properties.
pretty straightforward, isn't it?
Yeah,
so
yeah.
So-
all,
100
all
words.
conservation properties.
Right, all conservation properties. So
Yes.
if somebody who happens to own a bike shop wants to demonstrate 10 or 12 bikes at,
They need to
they
fill
need
that
to
out.
fill it out.
Yes.
So, okay.
And it's more for just
So-
safety wise, so
Yeah.
people know who's on the property when, so we're not having a cross-country meet and someone's
Bicycles.
holding a
The
dog
bike
event the
shop.
same
Right,
day, or
right.
someone brings a porta potty they're not supposed to, and all that good stuff. So it's just to streamline and make it very transparent what's going on when. And then if people want to attend these events too.
So any beer fest, we should make sure they.
That would be something you need a liquor license for, and I don't know if I have the jurisdiction to really even do that.
Just let us know what that is.
Figure that out, yeah.
Figure, please, go talk to the
Put that
town
on the
clerk
town
or town
comment.
secretary.
Put it in the recreation department.
We can figure that out. And then the other items are included in your packets. We have a wonderful volunteer. I thought they were gonna be here this evening, so I do apologize if they're not here. They may be able to provide further detail. But our wonderful volunteer, aside from you all, and Jeff, who also works on our trails, has been the champion of Bower Springs projects. They've proposed a parking area delineation. They have found a source to get rail ties from, which is what we will delineate, hopefully delineate the parking area with. The DPW director worked with specific calculations for the parking area. That's what you have before you, and the volunteer carried that over, believing that was the best possible method versus encroaching on the field area and the opposite area to be providing a natural barrier between the neighbors, the roadway, and the conservation property. So it would be a total of 18 parking spaces within the area that's currently gravel material. I'm not really sure. It's a mixture of different materials. It's dirt
So
now.
what would the material be?
So currently, we're just talking about delineating the parking spaces, but in the long run, which both the volunteer who's heading it and I've sort of ran it by DPW a couple times, not formally though, is taking road grindings or material that we have available and just redo the surface area, because there's some potholes and things become disarrayed after winters and England, obviously. But it's really just to delineate those parking areas for when there's events, or even just on a busy, nice day. We have people parking everywhere, and it either increases parking area to areas we don't want people parking, or it decreases parking area overall. So we'd like to just make it clear, without making it too robust and taking away from the conservation property.
It's one of the better plans I've seen for what to do with that space as it exists now.
The only thing that I worry about, Seeley Street, as you come in, because that's where everybody seems to bring the kids in to
Start
drop
walking
them
down.
off.
Yeah.
That maybe that should be like temporary, something. I
Yeah,
mentioned
so
it to
the other
Larry.
thing is even like handicap parking spaces,
Yeah.
we can do that.
Yeah, that's what that would be good.
Okay.
And that's
So how do you mark the
Probably
fact that
there.
it's a 45-degree parking slot?
Well, you come in from this
Rail
way.
ties, so we have a
Rail ties,
physical
we
So
can
you have
barrier.
rail tie, rail tie, rail tie, rail
Yep.
like that?
We're gonna
Does it
try
take
it.
up more space?
The rail
No,
ties?
no, they go right at the end of the.
Not really.
What do
They
they
do,
do?
but.
How do you plow during the winter?
That's DPW's problem.
So and that's why we waited, we actually, the volunteer was able to get this material, or find the material and
But we
figure out who's bringing it where over the winter, but I respectfully requested, at the thought of respecting DPW and their generosity in needing to plow these areas, to just let them go through the winter without them, let them be a part of it so that they're aware of where they are and they get used to it, because they go to the property to mow before before Tomdetting Nature Camp, just pathways, and then to empty the garbage there, and then to assist with the surface area. So as they familiarize themselves over the year, they should be okay for the winter. But,
Well, you can always stick a
yeah, a plow pole.
palm pole on it.
Um,
These things are pretty heavy, they're not railroad ties, they're concrete,
Okay.
you know, I think we're getting from Steve.
So you would put, and this doesn't matter, right?
No, this is,
You put these things where people drive up to it, right?
right, take out the front bumper,
Okay.
the little air.
Plow
thing.
guys,
Plow- plow-
take care of that.
Yeah.
They can plow where my street is, they can plow anywhere.
So is everyone okay? No one has
No one
any
has any
super
problems.
concerns? Okay. So that one's okay. And again, right now, we're just delineating, and then when new material is proposed to be introduced to help the surface area,
We'll talk.
we'll come back. The other project is adding material to supplement and stabilize the trail around the lower portion of the pond. Again, this is at Bower Springs, the furthest pond away from the parking area. The area highlighted in yellow is specifically where they're talking about. It won't be up to the pond edge. There will be a vegetated buffer between this material. Our volunteer is still looking into it. I basically just asked that he provide documentation, which may be on the back of that, in terms of what is in the material. Nope, just kidding, it's dimensions. So he's going to ask where he had found material that he believes is suitable, what exactly is in it. It seems to be all, like wood and relatively natural material, no large construction
So
debris.
is this worn out right there on the edge of the
Yes,
pond?
there are roots and it's eroded.
So everybody's dog goes running right through there?
Well, they go
Everyone's
jumping
dog,
over the roots, and
people-
people that walk there don't jump over the roots, and they ended up,
They trip a lot, yeah. Kids,
Cross-country
yeah.
skis, cross-country runners,
there's like
kids.
roots this high in spots.
So the thought would be to make it a project with either Tom Denny Camp, Eagle Scout, make it a collective day project that it gets accomplished with. Accomplished in, but something does need to get done. We briefly touched upon it last year, so it is something that
Yeah, it
the
makes sense.
commission's been aware of, but, we did apply for the grant. I still haven't heard back yet. We should be hearing back soon. But I would say that's probably not going to be included in the grant funds that we had applied for, because it's further down into the property, and I don't believe we'll have an excess of material.
And it's probably thinking more like stone workings or something along the other.
Yeah, so he's thinking more, it's
That's, I
a
know. that's what he's
natural
thinking.
mix, yeah, it's
He's not doing
stuff
anything
grindings,
that,
wood chips,
pavement
some-
or anything like that.
like very small fine gravel, or rock rather, and then in addition to that, some, woody debris, like leaf litter almost, so it's supposedly a real nice natural
It'll look good when it gets done.
material there, not stone dust, so it's not like we need to make an aesthetically,
Right.
I mean, we would make it aesthetically pleasing to the best of the ability, but it's not a huge difference from what's already there.
Would they go in with like 1,200 wheelbarrows, or would they?
So
That's 77
with the
cubic
appropriate-
yards.
Or pickup truck.
Needs the help.
with the appropriate permission from either myself or the Conservation Commission to get the key, you can technically drive
Yeah,
down
you can
there.
drive down there.
Your
I've driven
vehicle
down
may
there.
be scratched quite a bit, depending on where you drive, but you can get pretty close. You can't get all the way over there, but, you can get just
Yeah,
about
pretty darn
halfway
close
around the
there.
pond. Yeah,
And, you know, here where you're left out of wheelbarrows can.
yeah.
That's a
Just
good
a
content,
rough
nature
estimate.
camp project.
I'm not gonna ask you to visit, to site visit this with me, because I know I won't show up.
You won't show up.
So, but no concerns in terms of adding material there?
No.
As long as we find out what kind of material is going in, and it's okay?
Yeah, just by the heavy use of the area,
Okay.
seems like it would call for it.
And would you want the material to come back to our next meeting? Or do you want it just so long as it's okay?
I'm fine. I was gonna say, if you're comfortable with it and the land steward's comfortable with it, then I'm comfortable with it.
Where do they get the material? Is it free?
Well,
So that's what they're figuring out.
yeah, that's what we're trying to figure out where it's coming from. It's in Larry's, Larry Kuntz, I don't know if you know him, but it's in his court.
No,
Larry, what?
no, not his
Just
backyard.
grind things down. Yeah.
I missed it, but
No, it wasn't.
The other item was invasive removal efforts, so just maintenance of the property. I had suggested work days to Larry to try and plan like a big work day, get a bunch of volunteers, go out there. So just making sure that that's
on his
okay,
agenda.
which I think is fine. I don't have.
And you know, on the first Monday of the month is always the Trails Committee meeting, and everybody's welcome.
So will you actually have a work day there?
Yeah, we'll probably
Yes.
do it.
I'll bring the goats.
Good.
Oh, yes,
Yes.
I'm so excited.
Eat poison. Did you really have a three-legged goat? Oh, great.
You tell everyone?
Um,
All right.
okay, so I guess we're good.
Yeah, I think it's
Pretty much.
fine.
Okay, so everyone's okay with those three?
Yeah. What kind of mail did we get? We got any checks?
Did we have mail? Oh. We didn't get any checks,
No, damn.
unfortunately.
Was it-
What we get over and over again is the ArcGIS newsletter, so if anyone's ever interested in that, feel free.
One of my hives swarm.
In addition, where did they swarm to?
An apple tree.
Oh,
The cough, that's right.
sorry. We also receive time after time Kirby products, which are like picnic benches, trash barrels, kiosks, so if we ever feel the need to purchase a new one, we have catalogs for that. I believe my predecessor applied for that. In addition, we received in the mail a notice, which I think is very exciting, so long as all goes well, that the Bolton Equine Center LLC is petitioning for an agricultural business use special permit for the use of 96 Hudson Road for a large animal veterinary service. The use will include breeding, raising, and training of horses and the construction of a new barn with attached office. This is the Camp Virginia property, for those who aren't familiar with it, and I will be looking forward to seeing what they propose in terms of use of the space, proximity to resource areas, but I think it's a very good use of that.
They're gonna buy the whole thing?
They bought the whole
They bought the whole thing?
yes.
They're not gonna put 412 condos on that thing.
They are proposing at this time, a
Yeah.
veterinary service
Yeah.
and an office. But that was the mail we received.
Interesting, is right.
And on a good note, and then lastly, Keys Farm, we are doing weekly meetings with them. They have placed stump grindings for temporary stabilization of the basins located and slopes adjacent to basins of 3 and 2 on the property. In addition, basin 1 will be seeded today, or it had been seeded today, so I have to check on that tomorrow. So they're moving forward until we've been holding back on releasing all permits because we want to make sure that they're continuing this progress. And they have stated that they've received the signature from the adjacent property owner. I'm waiting to see the documentation that confirms that before allowing them to go into Danforth Brook to complete that remediation effort. That's where we're at. That's it.
I did not catch your typo in your minutes, but other than that, I didn't have
I
a
already
problem.
fixed it.
Did you? All right. Did anybody else have a chance? Did everybody else other than Jeff, we can't vote on this one, have a chance to look through the minutes?
Yes.
We can't do that because now we're down to 3.
Right, do we have, let me try this again. Didn't we need 3 because we only have 6? Didn't we say we're based upon the number of members we have now? Okay.
It's the majority.
Right, we do
not a
consider
majority.
3 or 4
But
It's
it's,
an even split.
it's even with split. So the majority, once it's over 5, the majority is 4 again.
Well, read through your
Sorry.
minutes and we can think about them and approve or not approve them next time. So for members of
So
the
we're gonna have
public.
2 sets of minutes to approve next time.
Correct, in
Well, you
theory.
don't.
And you can only vote on one because you're not special.
Can 3 of us vote now and the other person vote next time?
Sorry.
I know, you're excited to work.
Everybody changes the rules.
All right, anything else outstanding?
No, not that I'm aware of.
Anything from the audience? Like to make phone calls in?
I think you drove them away a long time ago.
Telling you that. I'd like to make a motion that we officially close the Tuesday, June 4th, 2019 meeting of the Bolton Conservation Commission.
I second it.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Good night, BATV.